Christmas Eve, the little girl who borrowed hope. The snow fell softly on Christmas Eve morning as Marcus Chen straightened his tie in the lobby of Chen Technologies. At 42, he'd built an empire from nothing, but the glass walls of his corner office had become both his throne and his prison. Success had cost him his marriage 3 years ago, and now he measured his life in quarterly reports and board meetings. His assistant Sarah knocked gently. "Mr. Chen, there's a situation downstairs you should know about." Marcus glanced at his watch. "I have the Harrison call in 10 minutes. "I know, but security found a child in the building. She won't leave until she speaks with you specifically." Something in Sarah's voice made him pause. In 15 years, he'd never heard that particular tone from her. The lobby was nearly empty when Marcus stepped off the elevator. Near the security desk stood a small girl, perhaps 7 years old, wearing a light blue winter coat that had seen better days. Her blonde braids were slightly messy, and she clutched a worn teddy bear tightly against her chest. Red mittens dangled from strings at her wrists. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They held a determination he recognized, the same stubborn hope he'd carried as a poor kid who'd refused to accept the world's limitations. "I'm Marcus Chen," he said, kneeling down to her level. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said, her voice small but steady. "Emma Morrison. I came to ask you something very important." "How did you even get here, Emma?" "I took the bus. Mommy always says when you need help, you go to people who have what you need." She looked around the gleaming lobby. "You have lots of things here." Marcus felt something crack inside his carefully constructed walls. "Where is your mother?" Emma's eyes dropped to her bear. "Home, she's sleeping. She sleeps a lot now since she got sick. That's why I came alone. She doesn't know." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we were about to call social services." "Wait," Marcus said, holding up his hand. Something about this moment felt important, though he couldn't explain why. "Emma, what did you want to ask me?" The little girl took a deep breath as if gathering all her courage. "I need to borrow a Christmas tree. Just for tonight. I promise I'll bring it back." Marcus blinked. Of all the things he'd expected, this wasn't it. "You want to borrow a Christmas tree?" Emma nodded earnestly. "Mommy loves Christmas. Before she got sick, we always had a tree with lights and everything. But this year we can't afford one because of all the medicine and doctor bills. I saved my allowance, but I only have $12.47. The man at the tree lot said that's not enough." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small Ziploc bag filled with crumpled bills and coins, holding it out like a treasure. "So I thought maybe someone rich could lend me a tree just for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Mommy always says Christmas is about hope and miracles. I want her to have that one more time." Emma's voice wavered slightly. "The doctors say she's getting worse. I just want her to have one more real Christmas." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Around him, the lobby had grown quiet. Sarah had her hand over her mouth. Even the gruff security guard was blinking rapidly. "Emma," Marcus said softly, "does your mother know you're here?" The little girl shook her head. "She thinks I'm at Mrs. Patterson's apartment downstairs. Mrs. Patterson is old and her ears don't work so good anymore. She falls asleep during her shows. I left a note saying I went to play in the hallway." Marcus should have called social services. He should have had someone return this child to her home immediately. He should have gotten back to his Harrison call and his spreadsheets and his safe, controlled world. Instead, he heard himself say, "Let me make a phone call." 20 minutes later, Marcus sat beside Emma in his car. He'd canceled his meetings for the day and somehow convinced a very worried Mrs. Patterson, who'd finally found Emma's note, to give him the Morrisons' address. The elderly neighbor had been reluctant until Emma got on the phone and begged her to trust the nice man who's going to help Mommy. They drove through streets that grew progressively less affluent. The gap between Marcus's world and Emma's becoming painfully visible. She chattered nervously beside him, telling him about her mother. Mommy's name is Grace. She's really pretty and she used to laugh all the time. She works at the diner on 5th Street. Or she did before she got too tired. She makes the best pancakes in the whole world. She always cuts mine into funny shapes. Last time she made a dinosaur. Emma's voice grew softer. She tries to hide when she's hurting. She thinks I don't notice. But I hear her crying sometimes at night when she thinks I'm asleep. I want to make her happy again, even if it's just for one day. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter, memories flooding back. He'd been 9 when his own mother got sick. He remembered that same desperate need to fix things, to somehow make everything right again through sheer force of will. They stopped first at a Christmas tree lot. Marcus didn't just buy a tree. He bought the most beautiful 7-foot Douglas fir on the lot, along with boxes of ornaments, strings of lights, and a golden star for the top. Emma's eyes grew wider with each addition. But I can only borrow it, she whispered. I can't pay for all this. Marcus knelt down beside her. Here's the thing about lending and giving, Emma. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones we don't have to give back. Consider this a Christmas miracle that your mother was right about. The apartment building was old but clean. They climbed 3 flights of stairs, Marcus carrying the tree while Emma led the way with shopping bags of decorations. She stopped at a faded green door and pulled a key from under her coat. Mommy, she called softly as they entered. The apartment was tiny but immaculately kept. Despite obvious financial struggles, there were touches of love everywhere. Hand-drawn pictures covered the refrigerator. A small bookshelf overflowed with library books. Crocheted blankets in cheerful colors brightened a worn couch. A thin woman with Emma's blonde hair appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, wrapped in a bathrobe. She was perhaps 35, but illness had aged her. Still, Marcus could see the beauty Emma had mentioned and something more. Grace Morrison had kind eyes, the kind that had seen hardship but refused to become hard. Emma, what's going on? Who is this? Grace's voice held confusion and rising alarm. Emma ran to her mother. Mommy, please don't be mad. This is Mr. Chen. He's helping us have Christmas. Grace's face went pale. She looked at Marcus with a mixture of fear and embarrassment, her hand unconsciously tightening the bathrobe around herself. Marcus set down the tree quickly. Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry for the intrusion. Emma came to my office this morning. She was trying to borrow a Christmas tree for you. I wanted to make sure she got home safely and, well, I thought you might accept some help. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Emma, you left the building alone? You know you're not supposed to do that. What if something had happened to you? Her voice broke. Baby, we talked about this. Christmas isn't about trees and presents. But you love Christmas, Mommy. Emma said, her own tears starting. You always made it so special. I just wanted you to be happy again. Grace pulled her daughter close and Marcus watched something in her crumble. The strong front she'd been maintaining, for her child's sake, finally collapsed. She was just a scared mother facing an uncertain future, trying desperately to give her daughter some sense of normalcy. I'm sorry, Grace whispered, looking at Marcus. I don't know what to say. We can't accept charity. I've always managed to take care of my daughter. I've never asked anyone for anything. Marcus surprised himself with what he said next. Mrs. Morrison, Grace, if I may. My mother died when I was 12, cancer. Before that, we had one last Christmas together. A neighbor brought us a tree and decorations. My mother was too proud to accept it at first, just like you are now. But that neighbor told her something I've never forgotten. He said, let someone give your boy this memory. Someday when he's able, he'll pass it on to someone else. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I've spent 20 years building a company, accumulating things, measuring success in dollars, but I forgot that promise. I forgot to pass it on. Emma reminded me today. She reminded me what courage really looks like. Please let me keep a promise I made a long time ago. Grace was crying openly now, and Marcus found his own eyes wet. Emma looked between them with worried hope. "Okay," Grace finally whispered. "Okay, thank you." What followed was something Marcus hadn't experienced in years. Pure, simple joy. He and Emma spent the afternoon transforming the small apartment, while Grace rested on the couch wrapped in blankets, directing their efforts with growing excitement. They set up the tree near the window. Emma carefully hung each ornament while Marcus strung the lights, following the little girl's very specific instructions about proper light distribution. Grace laughed, really laughed, when Emma insisted that the silver bell ornament absolutely had to go on the north-facing branch because that's where bells belonged. Her father used to say that. Grace told Marcus quietly while Emma was in her room, getting more decorations she'd made at school. He passed away when she was 3. Drunk driver. Emma doesn't remember him much, but she's got his stubbornness and his heart. "She's remarkable," Marcus said. "You've done an amazing job with her." Grace's smile was bittersweet. "I'm trying. The doctors say I might have 6 months, maybe less. The cancer's aggressive. I've been putting off talking to social services about what happens to Emma after I'm gone. I have no family left. Her father's parents wanted nothing to do with us. I lie awake every night terrified of leaving her alone in this world." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He looked at Emma, singing to herself as she carefully arranged a paper angel she'd made, and something fundamental shifted inside him. They ordered pizza for dinner. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd sat on someone's floor eating takeout, but here he was, cross-legged on worn carpet, listening to Emma explain the intricate plot of her favorite animated movie. Grace ate more than she probably had in days, color returning to her cheeks as she watched her daughter's happiness. As evening fell, they turned off all the lights except the Christmas tree. The small apartment glowed with warm golden light. Emma sat between Marcus and Grace, her small hand finding Marcus's larger one naturally. "Make a wish," Emma whispered. "That's what Mommy and I always do on Christmas Eve." Marcus closed his eyes. He'd stopped believing in wishes years ago. But sitting here, in this tiny apartment with this brave little girl and her dying mother, he found himself wishing harder than he ever had as a child. He wished for more time for Grace. He wished for Emma to never lose her hope. And selfishly, he wished that he could somehow be part of whatever time they had left. "What did you wish for?" Emma asked. "I can't tell you," Marcus said with a small smile. "Then it won't come true." "That's silly," Emma said matter-of-factly. "How can wishes come true if people don't know what you need? I think wishes work better when you share them." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. Grace was fading, her energy spent. Emma helped her mother to bed, tucking her in with the practiced care of a child who'd become a caregiver too soon. Marcus stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment. "Thank you for today," Grace said softly. "You gave Emma something I couldn't. You gave her the magic back." "She gave me something too," Marcus replied. "She reminded me why any of it matters." As Marcus prepared to leave, Emma grabbed his hand. "Will you come back tomorrow? For Christmas?" Marcus looked at Grace, who nodded slightly. "I'll be here," he promised. He kept that promise. Christmas morning found Marcus back at the Morrison apartment, his arms full of gifts he'd stayed up half the night shopping for. But more importantly, he brought himself. His full presence and attention, something he'd stopped giving to anyone years ago. They spent the day together. Marcus made pancakes following Grace's instructions, while Emma decorated them with chocolate chips. They watched movies. They played board games that Emma won through cheerful cheating. Grace laughed until she cried, and Emma glowed with happiness. But it was in a quiet moment, when Emma had fallen asleep against her mother on the couch, that Grace said something that changed everything. "I have a lawyer," she said softly. "A legal aid attorney who's been helping me with Emma's future. I've been putting off making final decisions because I couldn't bear to choose. But watching you today, I've been thinking." She paused, gathering courage. "Would you consider being Emma's guardian? When I'm gone?" Marcus's breath caught. "Grace, I'm a stranger. We just met yesterday." "No," Grace said firmly. "You're the man who dropped everything to help a little girl who wandered into your building with $12 and a dream. You're the man who kept a promise to his mother for 20 years. You're the man my daughter trusted with our Christmas miracle." Her eyes were clear and certain. "I've watched how you are with her. How you listen like she matters. How you see her, really see her. That's what she'll need. Someone who sees her." Marcus looked at Emma's peaceful face. This fierce, hopeful, impossible child who'd walked into his building and cracked open his carefully sealed heart. "Yes," he heard himself say. "Yes, I'll be there for her. I promise you." Grace died 4 months later, on a gentle April morning with Emma holding one hand and Marcus holding the other. She went peacefully, her last words a whispered thank you to the man who'd promised to love her daughter as his own. The adoption process was lengthy, but Marcus navigated it with the same determination. Emma had shown that Christmas Eve, he sold his downtown penthouse and bought a house with a yard in Emma's neighborhood, near her school and the friends she'd grown up with. He restructured his company, delegating responsibilities so he could be present for school, plays and homework sessions and the 1,000 small moments that make up a childhood. It wasn't always easy. Emma grieved hard for her mother, and there were nights when Marcus held a sobbing child and felt utterly inadequate to the task. But he showed up. Every single day he showed up. Now 5 years later, Marcus stood in the living room of their home, watching 12-year-old Emma decorate the Christmas tree with the same intense focus she brought to everything. Many of the ornaments were the same ones from that first Christmas. Grace's silver bell held the place of honor, hung carefully on what Emma still insisted was the north-facing branch. "Dad," Emma said, using the name that still made his heart skip every time he heard it. "Do you remember when I came to your office and asked to borrow a tree?" "Every single detail," Marcus said. Emma smiled, that same determined smile she'd worn at 7. "I've been thinking, Mom always said that Christmas was about hope and miracles. But I think it's really about people who show up when you need them most. People who see you and decide you matter." She held up a new ornament, one she'd made at school. It was a photo of the 3 of them from that first Christmas, surrounded by paper snowflakes and glitter. "I think miracles are just people being brave enough to care," Emma said. "Like you were. Like Mom was every day she fought to stay with me a little longer. Like we get to be for other people." Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug, this wise young woman who'd taught him that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or borrowed. They can only be given freely, from one heart to another. "You know what?" Emma said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I'm glad you never made me return that tree." Marcus laughed through his tears. "Best investment I ever made." As they stood there, surrounded by the glow of Christmas lights, Marcus thought about that scared, lonely man who'd knelt in a lobby 5 years ago, looking into a hopeful child's eyes. That man had thought he had everything and needed nothing. A little girl with $12 and impossible courage had shown him the truth. He'd been the one who needed borrowing. Borrowed back into the world of connection and love and messy, beautiful humanity. And unlike the tree, he'd never had to give it back. Some gifts, it turns out, are meant to be kept forever. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness can change everything. Subscribe for more stories about hope, love, and the miracles that happen when we open our hearts to one another. And in the comments below, tell us about a time when someone showed up for you when you needed them most. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.